Rabbit here, and I got, for the first time on my show, a regular on purchase among a couple other YouTube channels, Joe. How do you say
Hey,
your last name?
Corallo.
Corallo. That's what I thought. Welcome and welcome aboard, Joe. Joe, you've had quite you've had a interesting career, if I understand right.
That's I I like to think so. Yeah.
Well, try to those of here who don't know who you are. Want to talk a little about yourself first, just a little.
Sure. Real quick, I started self-publishing comics around 2011. I tabled in the small press section of New York Comic Con in 2011 with a
Hmm.
couple of self-published comics, and I was diagonally across from Tim Sale, and
Ah.
he was very nice. I'm sure he didn't keep the comic past the first trash bin he walked by, but he was very nice about it. And
Hmm.
from there, the next year, I started doing some self-published comics with Danny Luckert, who's gone on to do a lot of work at Image and Boom with people like
Hmm.
Colin Bunn.
Yep.
He just wrapped Red Mother at Boom a
Oh,
few
yep,
months or
yep.
so ago, and and oddly enough, the illustrator on the first couple of comics I self-published was Bob Wolf, who has moved on to gaming YouTube, and
Hmm.
he has a channel, Wolf's Den, 640,000 subs. So he's doing
Hmm.
really well over there.
Before we go further,
So
I just got to
yeah.
double check. You said Jeremy Hun. Is that who you said?
No, it was
Oh,
Danny Luckert,
oh,
and then
Johnny Walker. Sorry, I looked it
Luckert
up.
and Jeremy Hunn's the writer,
Writer.
but
Okay,
he's
I was looking
also
it
an
up.
artist. Yeah.
Right, right. I just looked it up because I just want to make sure I got the name wrong. Obviously, I went for the wrong name. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so I
Sorry.
did that, and then, I did a little bit on reviews and stuff like that. I
Hmm.
wrote for some sites like, what was it, Insert Geek Here,
Hmm.
Comic Mix.
Yep.
I've been a contributor to Geeks Out, and I still contribute there. I edit their blog, and they're the
Hmm.
big, LGBTQIA plus,
Right.
sort of blog for geek stuff. Um, and as I did that, I eventually got into my first published work was with Geeks Out Presents Power. It
Hmm.
was an anthology. I actually have it right here. Let me see, but yeah, this is where I had my first published work in. It's a four
Hmm.
pager that
Yep.
was illustrated by Sam Johns,
Ah.
who went on to do some stuff at DC, including Punchline. But
Right. Right.
yeah, we did a story that was a bit of a pastiche to the Legion of Superheroes. It was like a
Hmm.
four pager, and the letterer on here was Sean Aldridge, who's
Hmm.
also done some stuff at DC, and he's come back recently to do
Right.
some more work at DC. And I did a
Hmm.
couple more anthologies before, I like small pieces and ones until I decided to start doing my own.
Right. Funny you mentioned about your columns. I just noticed that Nerdette had shared one of your columns from 2015 on
Okay.
Comic Mix.
Sure. Yeah,
Yep.
no, I was
Yeah.
happy with that. I got to know, I was writing columns alongside Denny O'Neil, John
Hmm.
Ostrander,
Oh
Mike
yeah.
Gold, but Comic Mix actually put out the first anthology I edited with my friend Molly Jackson here, mine to
Hmm.
benefit Planned Parenthood,
Hmm.
and you see the Comic Mix
Yep.
over there. It's
Yep.
hard to do with the camera, and I'm always
Oh
pointing
no,
at the wrong thing,
no,
but
I do the same thing. Trust me. When I'm trying to
yeah.
do it, I'm like, I have I'm saying like, okay, right here. No, wait. Oop, oop, oop.
Yeah, but no, it was I had a wonderful time putting this together. We worked with Neil Gaiman, Gail Simone, Mark
Hmm.
Waid, Paul
Yep.
Levitt, Devin Grayson,
A lot of
you know,
people.
yeah, Brian Azarel, Cliff Chang did a story together. Shannon
Hmm.
Wheeler, Brian Talbot.
Yep.
You,
So
you
you've
know,
got a lot of, at least, well, we've worked with a lot of people through that.
yeah, and then we got the Ringo Award for that anthology for Best
Hmm.
Anthology 2018, and we got an Eisner
Nice.
nomination for the story that
Mm.
Seth Castellucci and Scott Chandler did
Right.
on there. And then what else? I then edited the two Deadbeats anthologies. The
Hmm.
Deadbeats 2 just came out. I just got my
Hmm.
copy the other day. And that was a lot of fun. The most recent one, we had people like Ron Mars, Jamal
Hmm.
Igle,
Yep.
Lila Sturgis, Nancy Collins,
Mm-hmm.
William S. Globes, and then I also edited a few comics for people. I did the third volume of Kim and Kim. I edited
Mm-hmm.
Lost on Planet Earth for Mags over at Comixology Originals.
Right.
I co-wrote a short at TKO Studios that
Mm-hmm.
Paula Zapata illustrated, and that just got collected in a larger shorts collection.
Right.
That you can pre-order now. Um, and I wrote and co-created She Said Destroy over at Vault, and
Mm-hmm.
you
So yeah,
know,
again, your experience is vast
yeah,
and all over the place.
yeah, thank you.
Yep. So yeah, but one thing I've always been impressed when you're on with Perch is your
Mm-hmm.
vast knowledge of comics, and
Mm-hmm.
you're just one of those who, like Mark Waid or some of those other comic creators who, what I mean. Well, when you're with Perch, you come up with that vibe of the guy, one of those guys who just talks about all these type of comic things, and you're like, how many people even know about these? Like you talking with him about the Heroes Reborn Thor comic and everything. Of
Yeah.
which I'm saying this in jest. I am saying this in jest. I had initial dibs on that video with him. I'm I'm saying that in jest. I am saying
No,
that
I
in
know, I know.
jest.
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
but because of that, I want to talk to you about your opinions on everything on
Mm-hmm.
DC, Marvel, the multiverse, Omniverse, linearverse, all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and how I've been a big, huge fan of it. I mean, it's in my title, videos from the
Sure,
multiverse,
of course.
but at the same time, it does feel like lately it's also getting a little bit of a bad rep for some people, especially when you have certain YouTubers making claims like, "Oh, the whole point of the multiverse was to create diverse characters," which is like, no, it wasn't. But I
No, yeah,
digress.
exactly. There's
But
so many great stories in the multiverse, or just DC Elseworlds in general.
oh yeah. I have almost all the Elseworlds just about. There's like a
Yeah,
few obscure ones, like one that came with a toy. I'll never find
yeah.
that one.
Well, there was the one Jose Luis Garcia Lopez illustrated, like Kal-El, like that was
Yep.
like
Oh,
a
Cal,
character.
Cal,
Yeah,
where he went to medieval times.
yeah.
Boy, did that get brutal! That got brutal.
I have that one. I love
Mhm.
Metropolis is one of my favorites because
Oh
that's
yeah,
Ted
Metropolis.
McKeever.
You had Metropolis. You had Nosferatu and Blue Amazon.
Yeah, and this is another one I happen to have it by me that I really
Hmm.
enjoyed was
Oh, yep,
Son of
Son of
Superman
Superman.
and the
The
old
original John
hardcover.
Kent with J. H. Williams and Howard Chaykin.
Yeah, no, and,
Oh yeah,
that
and I
was
got with me Multiversity. I got just like I
nice.
said, I got so many of them. One of my all-time favorites was always Superman Batman Generations
Hmm.
by John Byrne.
Yeah, and you can
Yep,
I believe that's on sale on Amazon right now as part of
on the
their
omnibus, but it
yeah.
does not include, for obvious reasons, the unofficial tie-in to it, the Superman and the Batman Captain America crossover, which is in the same
Yeah.
universe.
Yeah, but I think they're still doing, at least they were yesterday, buy three for two, and I think
Ooh,
that omnibus was on there, and there's a few other
I'll look
goodies
at
on
that.
there. So if you
Yep,
don't have that one already, and you
yep.
want to look at some other stuff, check that
Yeah,
out.
but yeah, I will.
Yeah.
But it does feel though like it's a multiverse, and now you have the Omniverse, which I
Hmm.
feel I like the idea of the Omniverse. This
Hmm.
idea that everything counts, everything's canon. It's both brilliant because that's pretty much what the multiverse was originally,
Yeah.
before they tried to put limitations on it.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, I'm one of those who agrees. They try to put limitations on it, but then when they try to broaden it back out, they still put limitations on it in a bad way. Like
Hmm.
multiversity was that 52 words, but then Morrison lays claim for the majority of them. It's like, yeah, not hardly anyone's going to touch those that Morrison's already laid claim to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what do
No.
you feel on that?
No. I like a lot of these sort of things. I think the problems come when it gets over like it starts turning into in some instances like
An excuse, maybe.
an excuse to kill off all the characters you want to kill off
And
and there
then say,
not being
oh,
the kind
that's
of
not
stake.
canon. Yeah,
Yeah, so,
that's what originally started in the first place. Oh, is it in like people are going to freak out? It's not canon. Oh, it's on another Earth. Or how are
mhm.
we going to have these two DC and Marvel crossover? Oh, it's on Earth's dollar sign.
Yeah.
I always laughed at that one, Earth's dollar sign,
Mhm.
because it was for money.
Yeah.
But I do feel like then you come up with like the linear verse, which
Mhm.
interesting idea, but I can never see that working.
Yeah, no, the linear verse is it's
Good concept, but
a
it's
for effort, I guess, but yeah, it's not
yeah.
it is not a great
Because there's no rules
thing.
to it. There's no rules to
Yeah.
it. It's like Bruce can age, but slower, but Night Dick doesn't.
So yeah, so like Perry White's like 600 years old or something like
Yeah, I've seen
that.
like that. It's like there's no set rules except just saying, "Oh yeah, you've been around from that, and it's been the same thing." I mean, it's a very the Dios thing, if you ask me.
Oh, for
Trying to
sure.
say
Yeah.
everything's canon, but then you look at what he had planned for the timeline. The fact you had, for example, you had to be, Lex was president for 1 year. No, he
Right.
was president for his whole first term, not one
Hmm.
year. Or,
Yeah.
the events of Who is Wonder Woman, the Alan Heinberg, Jeff Johns. Oh, let's push that over to New 52. You
Yeah.
can't do that. It's
Hmm.
like,
Well, that and it also muddied Morrison's Batman Incorporated
oh yeah, definitely.
because Morrison also kind of just didn't listen to some of it and just kind of did their own thing. So like
That's what he does. What he expects from
yeah,
Morrison.
so it kind of contradicted some of the stuff that they said wasn't in canon anymore. But
Oh yeah, like the Outsiders. He had the outsider, Didio's outsider still there, even though it's like, wait, why is Freight Train there? He should be gone.
yeah,
Yeah, but at the same time, though, again, when you have, I do think unleashing the multiverse is a better
yeah,
thing than limiting it, but keeping at least a restraint on it, and that's why I feel I'm looking forward to Infinite Frontier. What they've set up with that, I mean, with playing off of Multiversity and having it be what happens when this stuff beforehand. I mean, you've read Infinite Frontier, I assume, right?
yeah. I'm not all caught up, but
Oh,
I've been reading some. Yeah.
so I'd be spoiling the ending.
Okay.
But I would say it ties into Multiversity with the Gentry and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I just feel though, like I said, it's kind of a bad rap. It just feels like it's like, yeah, you have the Black Label books. They're pretty much Elseworlds. You've had, the What Ifs. I mean, have you read that new Spider Shadow?
Spider Shot I really liked.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the fact they added and made an additional issue because it was that well received. It's like,
Yeah.
and the ending, it is bleak.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Elseworlds. But I always felt somewhat, or what ifs, but I always remember some what ifs were done as a F you sometimes to the fans. Like, you didn't like it? Well, we did it your way. Things would have gone worse, even though it was so convoluted how worse it would get, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. No, it's yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate that kind of stuff. I hope that we can still get back to like one and done, like one shot kind of what ifs.
Well, oh, no, they stopped that around the AV. No, they start the first time they ever did it was the What If Avengers versus X-Men. Then they started still doing more around certain events, which was fine.
Yeah.
And now they're doing these as a mini series, which it gives them more room to breathe, I admit. But it's like, come on, can we go back to it, especially now What If has been a hit, the show?
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. But I fear that it's just going to be a series of like mini series rather than like one
Yeah.
shots or
As long as Chip
ongoing.
Zdarsky's writing a bunch of them, I won't complain.
Well, sure.
I mean, especially after I will roll in Life Story into that. At least the Spider-Man one. The Fantastic Four one, no.
Mhm.
I'm not liking where that one's been going with
No,
Mark Russell writing.
no, it's a shame because there's plenty of stuff I really enjoy from Mark Russell. He's currently
Oh, yeah.
doing Not All Robots with Mike
Right.
Deodato, and that's fantastic over at
Mhm.
AWA.
And
But,
I don't mind what's the other one? A Second Coming. I actually feel
Sure.
there's some interesting stuff. Like if you like Dogma by Kevin Smith, you'd like
Mhm.
Second Chances. That's that idea of
Sure.
giving you a different perspective on religion without demonizing religion, which you would think, given some of the stuff he's written when it comes to politics, you would think Mark Russell would, but he doesn't, which I respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same guy who did Flintstones, where
Mhm.
you had the mayor who was pretty much pot shots at not just Republicans, but even Democrats when you had the drone situation of these pterodactyls being sent in and ended up eating a family that were just picnicking. It's like,
Yeah.
who are they making fun of there, I wonder?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but you know what? That kind of makes me want to think of, if we move away from the topic for a moment, when, like, from your experience with some of these writers, where do you stand on how they are when they're coming up with this politics stuff? Because I asked this to Perch once,
Mhm.
and I'm asking you, how much is it, do you think, of they're writing what they know and it just happens to be political? And how much of it do you think they're doing it for antagonizing?
I don't think as many people are doing it to antagonize as people think.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is what they know, and some people, I get that people might not realize this, or
Mm-hmm.
even or think that I'm talking crazy. I assure you, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not. There are plenty of people who don't even view it as political that are
Right.
writing it. It's
Oh,
just
I
like,
can believe
but
that.
this
I
is
can believe that.
yeah, it's just this is what they think, or they think that, and sometimes it's not even what they personally think. They just think that's what the character would do,
Mm-hmm.
or they need a character to do something or a certain thing to do that. But a
Right.
lot of it's that. A lot of it's just pulling stuff from the headlines, because doing monthly
Mm-hmm.
comics is a grind,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
big
like,
time grind.
so, and I mean, that goes back to the beginning of comics, where it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, I gotta
Look
do
at
a
Denny
script.
O'Neil.
Yeah, but it's like, what are we doing? Oh, there's the wow, there's this crazy bank heist or so. Okay, I'm gonna write a story about
Oh
that.
yeah, I mean,
Like
I
stuff like
always
that.
remember there was that one story. It might have been Denny O'Neil or someone did a story that was about the Irish. No, I think it was Denny O'Neil. It was about the Irish. The Civil War is going on over there or whatever.
Yeah,
And it was so much picking a side. But it was. But I think the difference between then and now is that the old writers had nuance. Current writers do not. Where they wouldn't fully demonize the other side because they're like, you know, one that's too black and white. You know what I mean? I think that's
hmm
the other thing. I mean, there are some writers who do it, but I think nowadays you're having more writers that they wear too much on their sleeve without realizing it. If you know what I
and
mean?
there's an extent of that. But I mean, I've
Yeah.
talked to writers who have very genuinely been like, I have no idea what these people are talking about.
Hmm.
This isn't a political agenda thing. I'm just writing a
Right.
comic, and I
Oh
have
yeah.
no idea where this is coming from. But
Hmm.
I mean, there's no shortage of that kind of stuff in a lot of
Right.
work, in terms of like, there are plenty of people that do it well, and it's not just people like Pete Tomasi and Philip Kennedy
Right.
Johnson and people like that,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, you don't have to rack your brain too much to think of that, but there
Yeah.
are certain things that I think, like, Tom Taylor's done very well.
Hmm.
I think overall people seem to be enjoying his Nightwing a bit more than
Oh yeah.
his Superman, and
Hmm.
I really like the Suicide Squad.
Oh, I loved the Suicide Squad. I loved it because I felt
Yeah,
it was a new take without, because it's like, why can't we have a different team and everything? Once you were found out it was Black Mask and not Ted Cord, it made things a lot better to swallow. Because beforehand, you're like, oh, what's he doing to Ted?
yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but
for sure. And then, even beyond that, you go over to Marvel or Image and other stuff like that. I feel like people like Brian K. Vaughan and
hmm.
Hickman, and
Oh yeah, oh
Garth
yeah,
Ennis have done stuff in varying levels of subtlety.
oh yeah.
Touching on different
Brian K. Vaughan with
issues.
so much of his work, even Runaways. How much of that was a bit like, oh, adults are jerks, but
Yeah,
teenagers can be selfish.
yeah. So yeah. I mean, I think it's easy for people to get caught up on a
Wanting a bad guy.
handful of but people get caught up on a handful of examples
Hmm.
of this and that, when it's like, that's not,
Oh yeah.
that doesn't really speak to everyone. I don't think anyone is accusing, for example, a lot of stuff that, like, Chip Zdarsky and Donnie Cates, I wouldn't say is
Hmm.
overly political in the way
Right.
that
Oh yeah.
people would say those sort of things.
I agree, and I would say this. I do feel it's like when people are now dumping on legacies and story or mantle passages as a whole, all because of a few examples like Riri and all. It's like now they're retroactively saying, "Oh, it was never good." It's like, where were you with Nightfall? Where were you with the Captain? Are you now saying that's all crap? And now they say yes,
Mm-hmm.
it is because they should never. And it's like, but I realized here's the hypocrisy I've realized, and I wonder if you
Mm-hmm.
notice it too.
Sure.
You already know the obvious. There are those who are the very progressives who don't buy comics, who demand this stuff, like change it for our needs. And if they do change it, then they're like, yay, got it. Buy the first issue, never buy it again. Because it's like, well, I'm not going to buy it. I wasn't going to buy it anyway. I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed, though, on the opposite end, you have people say, stop changing our characters, give us new characters. But when they give them new characters, they never buy that. It's like, give
Mm-hmm.
us new characters and we'll shut up. They don't shut up. They end up complaining still, saying, like, oh, we'll make you Naomi. Oh, Bendis is giving us a new person of color, a female person of color. It's Riri 2.0. It's going to suck right after it's announced before the first issue. It's like, come on, guys, really? I mean, I don't know
Sure.
if you've noticed that.
No, I mean, the truth is, I mean, it's you can't even just say like both sides, because it's
Right.
different people having varying
Right.
opinions, but there are people on either side who
Yep.
there's a lot of pointing to each other saying you don't read comics, so you don't read comics. There are plenty
Ugh.
of people
Yeah.
you don't there are plenty of people who don't read comics regardless of ideology,
Right.
and that's just
Exactly.
what happens. But when it comes to these sort of things, I do think that it's on the one hand there are people who get attached to certain characters or
Oh,
certain
obviously, me with
legacy
Superman.
characters, but even beyond that, I mean, like there's a whole generation of people who their Green Lantern's Kyle and
Mm-hmm.
their
Oh
Flash is
yeah.
Wally,
Mm-hmm.
and they're upset that that's not the case.
Right. Well, yeah. Where's Kyle? Where's Wally? Where's
Yeah,
well, at least Wally now has the center stage, thankfully,
sure.
yeah, but yeah, where is Kyle now that I think about it? It's like he's hardly even appeared in Jeffrey Thorne's book, even.
Yeah, no, it's not about. That's not a book about Kyle. I think there are people who would
All
like a
right.
book about Kyle. There was the book I think Kyle was going to be in that was part of that DC round robin.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, yeah. He was going to be part of that, but it didn't win. It didn't get
Yeah,
that far.
that was
There
going
was
to
a
be
bunch.
Cena Grace and V. Ken Marion. I think were the
Yeah,
two who were
yeah.
doing that one. Yeah,
Yep. And I've also noticed one other thing, and is that some writers, I think, get a bit stigmatized. You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah,
this goes for both sides. Where you've
agreed.
had some, like for example, you have a Vita how do you say her name? Vita Ayer
Ayala.
and Ayala, or
Hmm.
Stephanie Phillips. They say a few things, and everyone's saying, "Oh, their work stings." Oh, what's that? It's like, I mean, Vita, she's hit and miss for me, I admit. But from
Sure.
whatever things I've heard from people, is that she's a sweetheart if you actually meet her. She doesn't really do all that stuff. She might post a few dumb tweets, but it doesn't mean that represents her as a person. But and then
Sure. I mean, I know Vita, personally. I
mm-hmm,
consider them a friend. I saw them over the weekend at New York
mm-hmm,
Comic Con. They've had me
mm-hmm,
over for dinner. I've met their wife.
right,
They've been very kind
mm-hmm,
to me for years. I've worked with them. I've
mm-hmm,
featured their work in at least a couple of anthologies I've done. So,
mm-hmm,
so yeah. I mean, just like anyone else. I mean, I think part of this is we do have to move past this idea of like, oh, these like binaries of like this creator is all good,
right.
this creator is
Oh,
all
exactly. I mean,
not good. I mean,
yeah,
there is no one who is doing work that is equally good or bad every issue, everything they're working
exactly.
on. There's stuff of Vita's that I'm gonna like more than others by virtue of the fact I like certain genres or certain styles or certain formats
Exactly.
more than that, and they would feel the same thing about what I'm doing, and that's just how that works. But you don't get anywhere by just like it's not helpful. The
Mm-hmm.
blanket this creator sucks. I
Yeah.
will say that and I'm not talking about Vita or anyone else
Oh no, I
with
understand.
this,
I understand.
but I will say that I do think with some creators it would be helpful if more people understood that reviews aren't for creators, reviews are for customers.
Exactly.
And because by the very virtue of by the time the review hits, like for example with like Beckstar,
Mm-hmm.
that book I finished writing that before the first issue came out.
Right.
There is nothing that someone could have said in a review that would have changed anything
Yeah.
that was coming out.
Exactly. It might change
So
indoors. If it's like a miniseries, that might change what happens in issue 6. Maybe if it's still being written on, but it's not going to change anything within the next few issues.
so yeah. But I also think, and then the flip side of that
Mm-hmm.
is I think there are some, either reviewers or people that share reviews and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that that might feel that they're not being heard when they put
Right.
out these like reviews and that things aren't getting changed. And again, it's not like that's not the
Oh yeah.
purpose of a review.
Oh, and I
So
agree with
yeah,
that. Or you have some of those who, the one thing that always drives me nuts is when you see people who demand respect. Like the creators should respect us, but they don't respect them first. And it's like,
hmm
why should they respect you when you're being hostile towards them? Like, I'm
Sure.
not being hostile. I'm giving them legit criticism, or they haven't earned my respect. Well, then, if they haven't earned
Yeah.
your respect, why should they respect you if you're coming at them with both barrels?
Yeah. No. People do. People take it too far. That
Yeah.
does happen.
And then I
Yeah.
feel, but now there are times where I feel the creators go too far the other extreme. And then, when they push back and it's like, say, oh, you live in your mom's basement, get out of it. It's like, oh, don't stereotype. Come on.
Sure. But yeah. I mean, that's just what happens. Everyone should just chill. But
Yeah.
the problem is, you know, social media, particularly Twitter,
Yep.
encourages hostility.
It does. It does
So,
encourage hostility, and it encourages, like a small echo chamber of people who think they represent the whole world
mhm,
when they're not even close.
sure.
I mean, yeah, how many times and unfortunately, though, I do think marketing has kind of assumed, oh, we should listen to what Twitter said. That represents our majority. It's like, no, that's just as much of a fallacy as saying we should listen to all the comic book store owners who live in the big cities.
Sure.
It's like, yeah, that has a certain demographic in those cities, and they're all usually homogenized.
But I mean, it's all different everywhere you go.
Yeah,
That's just what it is. Different regions like different things.
yeah,
That's
exactly. And you should not, again, you shouldn't just cater to the one that you think is the majority when it's like, no, because the others buy the comics too, especially when you're still sticking with the old guard. I think that's the other problem is you
mhm.
need new readers. And I think that's been like a struggle ever since, what would you say, the 90s is when it's been a struggle for them to keep new readers in large bulk.
I mean, it's always been a struggle. I mean, if you wanted to, take it back, I mean,
Yeah.
TV killed a lot of comics and other
True.
entertainment. And I mean, you used to have comics that sold,
Mhm.
closer to a million or millions
Yeah.
regularly,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it
The Ultra
slowly,
Zam comics were
yeah,
huge numbers.
yeah, and it slowly kept chipping
Or
away and
Captain
chipping
Marvel,
away.
sorry.
Yeah,
But,
but it kept chipping away and chipping away. Then you took another hit with video games, things like that.
mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's always just been more and more things that are taking that away. But there's so many different levels of people interested in comics, and I do think that it'd be nice to have more honest conversations about some of this because look, there are people that collect floppies.
Mm-hmm.
There are also people who primarily get just the trades or
Oh,
collector
yeah. I
editions.
used to be that way. I definitely
You
used to
know,
be that way.
and I mostly get collections, but I still get floppies. I pick up a
Mm-hmm.
few or so every week, and but I like the oversized formats. I like having absolute editions,
Oh,
omnibuses,
yeah.
things like
Oh,
that.
I can't win. I cannot wait to get the absolute Doomsday Clock to have it right next to my absolute Watchmen.
Yeah,
That'll be,
no,
yeah.
nice. I have
Yeah.
what was it? Dave Gibbons
Yep.
sketched
He
in
signed.
my
Oh, yeah.
absolute
He
launch every
signed
week.
mine. Yeah. Then,
Nice.
but yeah, it was Doom because But yeah, because I'm just saying with that because you see the trade for both of them, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, they fit perfectly next to each other there. I
Oh
want
yeah.
that for my omnibus. That's why I haven't gotten the trade
Exactly.
yet because like they're going to do an omnibus soon.
Yeah,
They
and I
did.
got I got that expanded
Oh,
Super Sons omnibus, and I got Pete Tomasi
yep.
to
Oh,
sign in
nice.
there over
Oh,
the
Tamati,
weekend.
he's such a nice guy. I've met him twice
Yeah.
so far.
He I had
But he's
him.
also one who's also
Yeah.
be able to be a bit blunt about his opinion, which I appreciate.
Sure. I had him sign my what was it? I have an original Starman page that he was the
Mm-hmm.
editor on. So I
Oh,
had
yeah.
James Robinson and him both signed, and I still have to get it framed. But
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah,
yeah. I met Robinson as well. Very fun guy, and I've met so many creators, and
yeah,
when you meet them in person, I know I've heard some people say, well, that's the other thing. Actually, I've heard some people say like, oh, they put on an act. No, I think they're blunt to you because, good
yeah,
lord, I had some bad experiences with Chris Claremont, but I never hold it against him because I don't know the context. He could have been having a bad day,
sure.
things like that. But I
Hmm.
always feel that when you see people online, they say like, oh, I'm speaking my mind, and I'm like, no, you're speaking through the anonymity of social media and the internet.
Sure.
No one would ever act the way you guys think you would in real life because then you get the guy who went up to Rob Liefeld, gave him the book How to Draw the Marvel Way, and said, "Read it."
Hmm.
And like
Sure.
I mean, and that's still been an infamous story, you know.
Hmm.
And I'm sure that's combining a bunch of people into one, but the fact is, you've had those few people that have done it who's saying they're going to get an applause when they're usually told GTFO.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because no one really wants to act that way in person, but some people think you should. And
Hmm.
yeah, but back to it's the multiverse, though. I also feel the multiverse applies to other things in general. Like you have the Arkhamverse, for example. You
Hmm.
know how all those games, which I personally feel was that one. I love that Batman, but it's a horrible version of Batman when you really think about it, because
Hmm.
you had to compromise him for the sake of ass-kicking single players games.
Sure. Hmm.
Whereas like, oh, you can't have multiplayer. You need to have Robin stay the f out of here. Even though part of the story of Origins was for him to embrace family. It's like,
Hmm.
why is he backpedaling now? It's
Sure.
yeah, but yeah, then you have the movies and everything, and I am appreciative of the movies bringing in the multiverse, and I think Spider-Man: No Way Home is going to be one of the first to actually fully utilize it to its potential, just as much as Spider-Verse. But I do fear that it might become an excuse to come up with whatever movies you want. Like it worked
Yeah.
for Joker,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't want to. Like it that makes you confused. Like, is this Black Superman that J.J. Abrams might be working on going to be part of the multiverse or not? Is it going to be a done in one? Is it going to be folded in? It's like it raises more questions, I think, than it needs.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like with like for example, with the Batman, where do you think that is? You think it's going to be its own little thing, kind of like Nolan's Dark Knight, where there's no other heroes, or do you think it's going to get folded in? What do you think?
That'll probably be its own thing, and then if it becomes a real big smash hit, they might try to tie some other things into it. We'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think that again, I think that's the other thing is you need people who know and understand the multiverse to do
Hmm.
it, which unfortunately I don't think there are that many that do.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, look at what happened in Endgame. Just the description of going through time and then trying to tie it into the multiverse is like two different things, guys. Two different things. I mean, I know Marvel's known for you change history, you make a new Earth, but then they
Sure.
made it complicated, wouldn't you say? I mean, because now, granted, Bendis kind of screwed that up in the first place with Age of Ultron, where he had to be, oh, you can actually change history. You shouldn't, but he did. And because of that, now it just changed the history. You remember that? How he just
Yeah.
changed everything, and then you had Al Ewing try to fix it, and then Bendis undid that fix. It was like, okay, come on, Bendis, quit being such a. And I will say this: if there's any writer I would give blame to for some changes, it would be Bendis and how he disregards continuity.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
you, we mentioned Tom Taylor earlier. People like to complain about him giving a Dick Grayson a sister.
Hmm.
I think the way he did it was one of the best ways, and it made sense. It didn't ruin any character, which is one thing I will always applaud Tom. When he does something like that, he makes sure it works.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Bendis, on the other hand, giving Lois Lane a brother, there's so many plot holes that opened up. Not the
Yeah.
least of which is Sam raised Lois like a like a son. Why would he do that if he already has a son?
Yeah.
Right? Especially when it's made clear he had it before Lois, and before Lois, like, then why did he bother? It tells you Bendis didn't care. Doesn't know. Why do you feel some writers are like that, where they just feel like, I know what's best, I'm just going to steamroll and retcon everything? Or do you think they don't even look at it as retcon, just, I'm telling my story, you all deal with it?
Yeah.
Is that what you think it is?
No, I mean, when it comes to someone like Bendis, it's when you've been the architect of so many events,
Mm-hmm.
you're not. What motivation is there to take a step back from that? You want to keep
True.
pushing the envelope. You want to keep doing things, and you want to keep, like he, no matter what people think about,
Mm-hmm.
Bendis, there are people who criticize some of his work, but I mean, he sold a ton of comics.
Oh yeah, there's a
You
reason why
know.
people were trying to do Bendis is coming, because
Mm-hmm.
they thought that was going to be a big, huge sales pitch. Not as big as they hoped, of course,
Mm-hmm.
and but but let's be honest though. People say, "Oh, he started doing that." Actually, he's been doing that since Avengers Disassembled, when he
Oh, for
retconned
sure.
Chaos Magic, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually took a What If to poke fun at it, saying, "Of course, there's Chaos Magic. It's what it is. It's chaotic."
Mm-hmm.
You had to say that for a What If, which cracked me up. To spell that out, and you had
Mm-hmm.
Avengers Children Crusade finally fixed everything. But
Sure.
but yeah, it's just the fact that what I'll say this though, I always would love to be a writer who would undo what Bendis does because it
Uh-huh.
would be fun. Because
Mhm.
I've noticed that when you look at it, it's like it feels like after Bendis does something, it's almost like what happened after Morrison's X-Men. You had to
Yeah,
immediately do the cleanup. You know what I
absolutely.
mean? Or was but no one cleaned up after Mark Waid though. I noticed with Doctor Doom. I wonder why that was.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah, that was a weird thing because he totally screwed it up. It felt like it was then again, what would you say was a bigger needing to be fixed, Magneto or Doom? Probably Magneto.
probably.
Yeah,
I
because
mean, yeah.
they both ignored everything Byrne did with the characters.
Mhm.
Byrne and Claremont, I mean.
Sure.
Yeah, but just because it feels like when, and that's the other thing. Do you think and it feels like there's some writers who don't like complicated villains and just want them to be pure black and white and no nobility to them? I mean, do you ever feel that's like the fun thing to write, or do you think it's funner to write villains that have yeah, nobility or a sense of grayness?
I mean, it all depends on the story. It's
True.
the story is kind of lead things, and you use characters that fit that story, or you have sort of character arcs in mind and have the story fit
Yeah.
that. So
Oh, that is very true. That is
yeah.
very true. Oh, I change the topics again. Did you have you are you at all into He-Man or anything like that?
A little bit. I mean,
A little bit.
I watched He-Man as a kid. I saw the live
Yep.
action movie with Dolph
Mm-hmm.
Lundgren and Frank Langella.
Oh, I love Franklin Joe in
I
that movie.
Yeah, no, Frank Langella is great. I When I was a
Yep.
kid,
Mm-hmm.
when I was like 5, 6, that's when the New Adventures of He-Man was out.
Ah,
So that's the one I kind of
grew
remember,
up
like
on.
growing up with, like that was the figures that were coming out at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a bit familiar with that, and the original show was on syndication all the time, so
Right.
you'd see that. But I don't have any, uh,
Love for it. Or
having no love might be a strong word,
no,
but
no, not no love, but no deep fanboy love for it.
sure, I have no nostalgia for He-Man really.
Exactly. That's a better way.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I was just asking because they just announced, the Revelations, and that was a whole to do and everything with it.
yeah,
And but I also got to say is that go back to the multiverse. They actually did that because you have so many renditions of it. They actually made a mini series out of that,
yeah,
I do feel it's better for creators when they're doing a new media to make it be its own version and have it stand on their own. That's why when I feel people say, "Oh, they race bent, they gender bent," it's like,
sure,
so what? It's not part of the line. It's not. I mean,
hmm
I don't say I want to have it be an in name only. You don't want that either. Good Lord, did the Fox X Men do that? Like Calypso and Psylocke, where just you had Rob Reiner admit he just opened the book, flipped through, and pointed at the name, saying, "You're this character." It's like no one wants that. But at the
for
same
sure,
time, though, it's like you know, it's. I say this when they talk about the gender side going on. That's because unfortunately a lot of comic characters red popped. That's the reason why you had redheads because the colors
hmm
popped. It's
sure,
not because, but there's way more redheads in comics than there are in our own real world. So
for
when people
sure,
saying why don't they do this and that, it's like because there's not that many natural redheads and not many red wigs actually fit work with everyone's face. I mean, good lord, you won't believe how many movies where I see people wearing red wigs and it's just like that's clearly a wig because it's not natural on that person's facial structure.
sure,
Yep,
hmm
or complexion and everything. And because of that, I always say this. So far, I can only think of two characters that are defined by their red hair: Poison Ivy and Mary Jane.
all right,
That's part of the reason why in the new Spider-Man, she's not Mary Jane. They could have named her Mary Jane, but instead they had to be she's a different character. And my theory is part of that was because they knew Mary Jane's defined by her red hair. That's my
sure.
theory. That's my theory anyway. I mean, what do you think on that one? Do you think that's a good theory, or do you think that might be giving them too much credit?
I guess I don't know. I mean, Mary Jane Watson's an interesting character, and I
Mm-hmm.
also don't know who would be like. I wonder who's responsible in a sense that the name of the character already existed when Ditko was doing it, but we never saw Mary Jane until John Romita Sr.
Yeah,
started
yeah.
taking over. I'd be curious, like, to know
Oh
who kind
yeah.
of gets credit for that.
that is very true because the only time we ever saw her was we see her hands and everything, so at least I had a good idea of her ethnicity and everything through that. But yeah,
Sure.
we never saw her face. We didn't know what color her hair was or
Hmm.
anything. But and that is a good point. But yeah,
Yeah.
I just feel though that
Well,
when you yeah sorry
yeah, because I mean, you also had to differentiate Mary Jane there because you already had Liz
Gwen
Allen, Betty Brant,
yeah, Gwen yeah.
Gwen Stacy. So
Yeah, I mean Gwen and Liz were already blondes as well. That's why with at least
yeah,
Gwen she had that hairband to separate her from Liz.
yeah,
And Betty brunette. So yeah, Mary Jane being red and everything. Of course, that
hmm
very first picture, face the tiger, you just hit the jackpot. There's a
hmm
reason why that's considered one of the most classic comic panels.
yeah.
And if I remember right, wasn't that John Romita Sr.'s first issue? I think.
His first issue was Amazing 39.
Oh, 39.
So
So that was right. Yeah.
yeah,
So it was in his first couple issues though. But
yeah,
yeah, but yeah, and but when you hear but there's also Poison Ivy. Just something about her. People know that she's a redhead. You know, green and red. Probably because you always have the significant green-eyed redheads and everything. So
yeah.
it feels like when it comes to yeah, like I said, with her, people always think of a red hair and why. Now, to be honest though, I do also think she'd be one of the ones who would unfortunately get race bent eventually, but I don't think right now anyway. I mean, look at Batwoman. They've already had, they got a redhead for the role.
hmm
But I do feel well taking this whole, gender siding it is like, and all that. I think they're taking it a little too far, I think, with the complaints. Like, just wait and see, guys. Otherwise, by your logic, I mean, can I always say this? My prime example of a good character that worked regardless of the race, Michael Clark Duncan's Kingpin.
Sure,
Perfect.
yeah,
I say he was
hmm
the perfect Kingpin. Heck, if you look at the voice actor for the '90s series, yeah, the character looked like the comic self, but it was a very distinctive black voice.
hmm
And it worked for that character. And I like Vincent D'Onofrio. I never felt his Kingpin in the Netflix series. It just
yeah.
felt like it felt it to a degree, but for the most part, I'm like, no, that does not feel like Wilson Fisk to me. That feels like someone else. Like this would be well, yeah, an alternate universe version, but it just, you know what I'm talking about, right? How he
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
felt a little too soft spoken sometimes, unless he got mad. But just some of it, it felt good for the universe, but it
yeah.
didn't seem to. But again, I'm not complaining entirely. It just didn't feel right to me. But I'm not going to say that shouldn't exist either, because I'm like, I already got my Kingpin with Michael Clark Duncan. I'm happy with that, and you know what I mean by that, right? And it feels like when people are complaining about um the MCU and everything. Because have you noticed also that people are now going off saying how why isn't it a one for one translation? We'll never get a one for one translation ever
Mhm.
because you can't. I mean, don't you think that's kind of like a pipe dream to ask for that? It's like make it exactly like it was in the comics. You can't. There's so many other factors that you can't. Now,
Well,
granted,
sure.
you can't. Sorry, I say when it came to like Let There Be Carnage, I both loved that movie, but I had major issues because they couldn't go all the way with it. I mean, did you see it yet?
Yeah, yeah, I saw it.
Yep. What did you think of it?
I had fun. It was basically like Jim Carrey in The Mask, but also a '90s action movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely, definitely. But I do feel like, I mean, but did you at all feel like they could have gone further with it? Because you have Carnage. It's freaking Carnage and Cletus Cassidy. There should have been at least, there should have been an R rating, or at the very least, a very high PG-13 bloodbath.
Sure. I mean, yeah, you can only do so much with a PG-13 movie, but
Well,
no,
yeah,
I think there was some fairly violent scenes in there that,
true. Yeah.
yeah,
But let's also be honest. Carnage is only known for two or three stories: his introduction, Maximum Carnage, maybe Absolute Carnage, maybe. And really, there's a reason why you could do that in comics, but you couldn't do that in real life, in a movie, right? It's like,
sure. But I mean, there's also God. What was the miniseries where I think it was a Ben Riley story and
oh,
Carnage like gets into the
oh,
internet?
oh, oh, that was
I
Carnage
think
Unleashed.
Larry. Yeah,
Yep, that was during, no, that was Venom Carnage Unleashed. That
yeah,
was
Venom
during,
Carnage Unleashed. But I
yeah.
think Ben Riley was also in that story.
Yeah, I think he
But
was in there, but it was one of the Venom miniseries that Larry Hama did. Yeah, it was.
yeah,
Yeah, back during the whole Venom's ongoing through a series of miniseries. Because let's be honest, that's
yeah,
what it was. It was every month, every 3 issues, new mini next month. It was
Sure.
I got all the omnibuses with all those in there, and
Yeah.
it's a real trip going through all those. It's like,
Hmm.
wait, what? Why are we doing jumping around? And how many times are we gonna have Wolverine and Venom run into each other?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they're the popular guys, but yeah, I know. Was Carnage doing that, or do you remember Cosmic Carnage when he got on the Silver Surfer?
Hmm.
Yep. Or that's the other, one other thing I will say. The moment when you have Venom eat Carnage, the first thing that popped in my mind was during during Spider Man and during the first relaunch of Spider Man after that first one when you had Venom actually eat Carnage and consume him.
Yeah.
Yeah, when they brought Eddie back, it was during it was John Romita Jr.'s artwork where
Sure.
he's just like nom nom. I was like, oh my god, they made a shout out to that. I did not expect that.
Yeah.
But then killing off Cletus, it's like, okay, really, you're basically slamming the door now and not bringing him back. And that's one thing I always feel like, stop killing the good villains.
Well, sure, but I mean that's just a trope that's been done in a lot of movies. That's part of why this feels a lot like a '90s like
Oh yeah,
superhero movie.
it does. But back on time with the multiverse, what do you and do you think that there's going to be like a pitfall we're going to be reaching soon with everyone focusing on it these days, both in movies and in the at least at DC in the comics, or do you think or do you think it'll just simply settle down and go back to normal one universe?
No, I mean it'll never just be one universe, but
Well, I mean, focusing on one universe,
yeah,
focusing on it.
uh, I don't know how they're going to end up going about it. That it's going to depend.
Hmm.
We're going to see it. I don't have the numbers or anything like that in front of me, but just how
Right.
many comics that are coming out that are like the main universe
Yeah.
versus all the different spin-offs and elseworlds and whatnot. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's going to be interesting. I wouldn't be shocked if we saw the main continuity continue to like shrink a little bit as there are more one shots, offshoots, and
Oh,
like
I wouldn't mind
prestige
that so long as they
formats.
tell us. So long as they at least tell us
Yeah,
this is another universe. And I think that's the other big thing. Like you have that Superman and the Authority. It clearly was coming off as its own self-contained thing, but now at the very end, that is made clear. Wait, it leads into the current work. How does that make sense?
yeah,
Because you opened up with Superman dealing with JFK and everything. We know Superman's not that old, and
yeah.
yet somehow it's canon. I Does that make any sense to you? I mean, even I'm a nerd. I am such a nerd, but even that is making my head break trying to figure out, like, okay, how does that make sense? You'd have to ignore everything from the first issue, and then get rid of that gray hair in Superman's temple to explain this. How does this fit in with the current stuff? My only thing, I mean, guess is, given how this was written in 2018, this was meant for 5G,
Yeah.
which then tells me, wait, if that's the case, and that was before Philip Kennedy Johnson came on, that tells me then that he was given the War World stuff. He didn't come up with it, despite him claiming to the contrary.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to make assumptions
Oh,
on what people came up with or not.
I know, I
don't
know.
know.
I mean, I'm pretty sure though the House of L, that sounds like all him. But the whole where you have Superman have a huge lineage way into the future.
Mhm.
I mean, not granted, that stuff Morrison did too, of course, with
For
the
sure.
all the Supermen from All Star and DC 1 Million. But
Mhm.
DC 1 Million, oh, that is a great example right there of a interesting idea, wouldn't you say? Of coming of just let's jump ahead to what issue 1 million of Action Comics would be. How many years in the future would that be? That would be the 853rd century. Well, no, and that no, we're never going to get there anytime soon.
Well, sure.
I know, but just what did you, okay, and what did you think about that with 1 million? Do you think the fact that it's still people are still doing stuff with it these days?
I mean, it's not. They're not doing that much with it.
Well,
Like
not that much,
it's
but you still have the occasional creep up. Like in Future State, they'd still put the jail, the Justice League A on. They, you've had you did Booster Gold 1 million.
mm, yeah.
That whole thing. So obviously there is a love for that era.
It's with a handful of people. I don't think it's really
True. And
universal
yeah,
thing
you're
at
right.
the offices.
True, you're right. It's not like everyone's clamoring for it, but
Mhm.
I do appreciate when you have some writers do that. But
Sure.
yeah, because it feels like like, hey, no one else is touching it, why not? But one last thing though, with the YA graphic novels, for example, I definitely do feel that that's kind of gotten a little bit too both a bad rap and yet a deserved rap. Does that make sense? Where it's like some people bash on or they overgeneralize bashing on it all, but some of it's deserved. Like some books are just utter trash, but some of which are like, okay, you guys are assuming too much on this book. Like, I hate to say it, I Am Starfire was not as bad as I thought. It wasn't great, but it was
Sure.
nowhere near as bad. Or you have people complaining about Superman smashes the Klan. You know what I mean? Where they're like, oh, it's this so political. Do you realize how things were back then?
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, do you feel like, uh, uh, sorry, let me rephrase the question. In your opinion, where do you stand on that? Just the idea of these wide graphic novels. Like, do you think they do have a purpose, or do you think it's kind of like it's been too damaged? Its rep is too damaged, at least for the longtime fans.
No, I don't think the rep is damaged. Most people who aren't into it, weren't ever gonna read it
Buy
because
it.
they're not in that demographic.
True.
I think when you're talking about the quality of the books and stuff like that, there's certain ones that really hit it out the park.
Hmm.
Most of the ones tied to the Teen Titans, as well as Primer, and a
Oh, Primer. I
couple
love
of
Primer.
the
I love Primer.
sure, a couple of the Batman related ones do well too.
Oh
But
yeah, like overcharged, turbocharged, the one with the car. I like that one.
yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the YA line, there's plenty good there. There's plenty to celebrate about it. I think there needs to be kind of more of a focus on what is YA, because
Right.
it's just this kind of nebulous thing and people have all sorts of different definitions for it, and they need to figure out what they're doing in terms of profanity,
Oh
because
yeah.
you
Oh
can
yeah. I was. I
you
am
can
Starfire.
you can swear all you want in these YA books, but a Batman book, like a Batman monthly comic that the
You
target
got censor
audience
bleep
is like,
it.
yeah, it's like 30 and 40-year olds, that, 50-year olds who are buying these like monthly comics mostly,
Right.
they're, censoring the profanity. So like
I
there's
know. I
there's
know. Yeah,
some
that was up.
weird
Or in
disconnect.
the same book, you have it censor bleeped, and then you have it not censor bleeped. It's like, make up your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that is a good point. That is a very good point, and it does feel like. But I've also noticed sometimes they use these YA graphic novels. It isn't my own personal theory to let like someone like Mariko Tamaki put in stuff that they want to write free of any restraints that they would normally have on, say, Detective Comics. They like let us put a bit of an editorial restraint on your stuff on Detective, but we'll give you free reign on the graphic novels. It kind of sometimes feels like that. Do you think that sounds like a sound theory, or do you think, again, I'm reading too much into it?
No, I mean, it all depends. Obviously, when you do something like Detective Comics, you have the Magistrate storyline, so you have to, fit into that. I
Yep,
think, with the YA stuff, it's out of continuity, so you have a little more
wiggle room.
wiggle room. Yeah. So yeah, of course you're gonna have different. There's going to be certain restraints that come with being a YA book, but beyond that,
Right.
you have some more freedom there.
True. That is true. Again, it's just been something I've always got. These are just stuff I've had the talks with some people. They've
Hmm.
always bring up before because it does feel like, again, when I see so many people just blow up saying, "Oh, look at YA Starfire. This means that they're going to do all this stuff." I'm like, where are you guys jumping from A to Q?
Hmm.
Can we go from A, B, C, D at least? Can we please do that? Or at least jump from A to D? You guys are going all the way too far with your assumption and just feels like, come on, guys, really? Can we just settle down and wait for this thing to come out first before we even assume everything?
Hmm.
Because I do feel that's becoming the biggest thing is no one's waiting anymore. It's like as soon as the announcement's made, boom, criticize. Boom,
Sure.
make all these assumptions and then act like it's like everyone keeps saying, oh, they were going to make John gay. Now it's revealed as bisexual, but they say, oh, but he's still gay. It's like, no,
Mhm.
that's not how it works. And I don't know if you've seen it, but I've seen plenty of people these days just go on and saying, you bring it up to them, and it's like, he's bi. No, he's gay. No, he's bi. Because obviously that's obviously taking into account his stuff with Saturn Girl,
Mhm.
obviously. And it's like, no, that just means he's gay, and they're just covering using it as a shield. I'm like, why do you guys assume this stuff? And that's reading, and then I give them a list of examples of characters who are bi, openly bi, have been shown to be bi, like Jericho during Christopher Priest's Deathstroke. You're
Sure.
about to marry one woman, and yet he had an ex who's a guy who he still loves.
Hmm.
Everyone's like, nope, they never show it. It's like, why are you guys thinking this? Why do you guys, you know what I mean, right? Just now,
Hmm.
do you think their fears are somewhat justified, like with John, or do you think there's some writers who, like, once they sensationalize it, it's clearly a case where they're not caring about how well they're handling it, or do you feel like it's more like they're going in with an intent, but marketing decided, let's make a bigger deal about this.
No, I mean, I'm not sure if these are anything that people should be like concerned about. I think
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand like that, but
Right.
yeah, obviously there's elements to some of these things they do that feel cynical,
Mm-hmm.
but it's people take a lot of that too far.
Yeah.
Especially with character like like John Kent,
Who's still
who's
new. Let's be honest.
yeah,
It's been around for 6 years, but he's still relatively new. And after what Bendis did to him, who knows what's happened? But it's
sure,
like when people are keep on saying, "Oh, but he had this one girl he liked when he was six, not six, when he no, when he was under 10." It'd be like, and I remember giving this example to someone. What if they reveal that Leanne Harper, who's now Sue, in
sure.
the Catwoman book, what if it's been revealed that she is bisexual or a lesbian, and then people be like, oh, what if like what they'd be like, oh, but she's been around a long time. Why didn't they ever set this up? What, when she was almost in diapers, you want to reveal then what her sexuality was? Why didn't they do it then? Why are they doing it now? When it's more like she's at a proper age where that would more fully develop. I mean, I think that's the other thing
Mm.
people, somebody don't take kind of like, why didn't they do it sooner? Like when they were a child, what's wrong with you guys?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a reason for people to be upset about anything like that. No.
Right. I mean, I know. I mean, when they make the sensational, yes, I feel that's a case where and it's like with marketing on everything. It's what happened to the Clone Saga. Remember? It's where it's like,
Hmm.
oh, like then when marketing controlled everything, and we all know how all that turned out.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, my last statement. It's my example I've always given, like with Kevin Feige when he makes his statements about pushing more of the progressive elements of some of the MCU stuff. But then when you actually go see it, it's nowhere near as much as what it seemed like, which tells me he was saying that they're trying to get those additional butts in the seat who would have done it purely because of it. And he probably knows like those who are complaining are going to see it anyway. There's going to be far fewer people who are not going to see it because I made a statement.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And I think some people take the marketing too far. I think now there are times where they're proven correct and it is as bad as they thought, but more
Sure.
times than not, they're proven wrong. I think. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that's just my final statement on that. That's what I feel it is, and I just wish people would just stop focusing on the marketing and just
Yeah.
focus on the product.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So you were about to
No.
say something else. What were you? That's
No.
what you said.
No. I'm saying that right now, the way it works is you get these press hits on certain
Mm-hmm.
revelations, so there's no there's nothing to discourage people from doing that sort of thing. And if
Right.
anything, it's the only kind of things that are getting press
Attention.
coverage in that sort of way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It used to
you
be
also
killing a
can't,
character. It used to be killing a character. You can't kill every
yeah,
character left and right, though.
sure. So you also can't blame publishers for trying to do what they feel they need to survive. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
you
Now again, it could blow up in their face, like New Warriors. It could
know,
blow up in their face like that, where that's a case where it's like, Okay, hold on. Step take like safe space and snowflake. What were we thinking?
Sure, and I mean, even with that, that was a
Well, the pandemic kind of put a kink in it, a dent in it. So
no, sure, but like I mean, even beyond that, that was just a misreading the room
hmm
kind of situation. I think that they genuinely thought they were doing something that
people would
people would have
like.
appreciated. That would have been a bit tongue in cheek,
hmm
but yeah,
Clearly, a bit too on the nose.
no.
Yep. So, well, anyway, I gotta start wrapping up anyway. So, but Joe, thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone that's been sticking around and listening to us. And hey, I might be able to come. I'd like to have you on again, probably with a
Sure.
more specific topic. I do think this one kind of a little too vague.
No, you're good. That's fine.
All right. So yeah, take care, Joe, and take care to everyone else. And I'll see you all in the next one.